And welcome back, everyone, to the Morning Buzz here on WMSC 90.3 Upper Montclair. And today, we have a very special guest all the way from the land of ESPN, producer of ESPN Radio, Evan Wilner. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
How you doing today? Long day?
I'm good. Just finishing up after producing our morning show and getting ready for tomorrow's show.
Awesome. So jumping right into it, I'm going to start during your time at Hofstra University. How did that prepare you for your professional career in broadcast and media? Yeah,
it was a huge help. I went to Hofstra thinking I was going to be the next, play-by-play voice, be on air, host a talk show in a market somewhere. And when I got to Hofstra, I did a little bit of the on-air stuff, but I also got some producing experience. And I realized that that's what I liked even more. I realized that I'm really good at problem solving quickly, which it takes to do, to be a producer. You need to have those skills. And I realized that I was really good at multitasking, which goes a long way when you're working behind the scenes. So all of those skills. And then, I produced a weekly show during the week, an all sports show dedicated to the football conference that Hofstra was in back when they had a football team. And then I also produced a weekly, just full Hofstra sports recap show on the weekends. And doing both of those shows made me realize what the proper career path for me was.
Awesome. So for those shows, what was your preparation process? And does that have any similarities to how you prepare today?
Yeah, very similar actually to how we prepare for the show today, in that the biggest thing actually is when I was at Hofstra, we had a team of, 6 or 7 people who were on air / producers, associate producers. And it taught me how to work in a team environment. It taught me how to assign things to different people on the staff to help come together and produce a show. And ultimately, my responsibility at that time was to make sure the best product went on the air. And that's still my responsibility today in my role at ESPN, is taking everybody's ideas from talent to other producers on my staff. And, what are the best ideas? How can we take somebody's idea and flush it out to make it the best on-air product? And that's stuff that I did back at Hofstra, that, working with a team of 6 to 7 APs, PAs, producers, whatever the titles are. And the same thing I'm doing today at ESPN.
Awesome. So, after you graduated from Hofstra, what was that transition period like from the college environment to the professional world?
Yeah, I was very lucky. I had a really good internship at Sirius Satellite Radio at the time. It was before they even merged with XM. And I got to work in a professional environment, running a board for a morning show on Sirius NFL Radio at the time. Now, Sirius XM NFL Radio. I got experience, producing best ofs and just being around in a professional environment. And when I graduated, I was lucky enough that Sirius had a part-time opening doing the exact same thing I did as an intern, just getting paid. So I feel like my transition was a lot different than most people, because I just kept doing the same thing I was doing as an intern. I just got paid for it.
Awesome. So what inspired you to really get involved into sports and media? Did you know that was going to be the career choice from a kid, or is that something that evolved over time?
No, I knew pretty early on. I have people in my family. My dad is a sports writer. My uncle was a producer for Westwood One Radio, and he was the play-by-play announcer for Manhattan College basketball. So it was from a very early age, being around my dad, being around my uncle, I knew this is exactly what I wanted to do. I would record, I know a lot of, young kids and people in the media. I've heard Kenny Albert tell this story as well. When you're young, you watch a game on TV and you immediately pick up a recorder and start recording the game into a microphone as you're watching it off the TV. And I was doing that probably when I was 5, 6 years old. So I knew pretty early on I wanted to do something in sports media, but it wasn't until college that I realized I wanted to be a producer. If you would have asked me when I was 10 or 11 years old, I would have told you my dream job was to be the play-by-play announcer for USC football. for whatever reason, that was just the answer I always gave. I always knew radio was something I wanted to do aside from TV. Now that I'm at ESPN, like TV has become a much bigger interest to me, but up until that point, I was always interested in radio and the audio medium and telling a story without the visual. But yeah, that came from a very early age. I would say around 5 or 6 years old is my first memory of when I wanted to get into this business.
So you mentioned some of your family members that inspired you to be a part of sports media. So I'm going to remove them from this question. You're not allowed to mention them.
Okay.
Who are some of your influences that you really looked up to in that realm of sports media?
Yeah, Ed Ingles is the name that comes to mind. He was the professional resident at Hofstra. I knew him early on in my life. I had met him and connected with him, and he was the sports director for WCBS 880 for a long time. He had called a Super Bowl on the radio during his career, and he's the reason I went to Hofstra. I knew that being under his tutelage and having some guidance from him in the business would be the best thing for me. So he's one of the biggest influences I had. And then I've had, some very good bosses and leaders that have taught me along the way. But I would say the biggest influence and why I'm here outside of my family members is Ed Ingles for sure.
Interesting. So sports media, as soon as I've been alive, it's really gone through a transitional phase, like most things in media, because of internet and social media. So I'm wondering, how has the development of social apps and a lot of internet websites really changed how sports is covered?
Yeah, I actually couldn't imagine doing this without Twitter. So I guess my first year of producing full time was at a local radio station in Hartford, Connecticut. And that was in 2008. And I think Twitter started really becoming mainstream in 2009. And so I only have one real year of thinking about this industry without Twitter. And I was very young and this was very new to me. So removing that, I can't imagine doing this job that I do today without Twitter. It's where I rely on for a lot of the information we use on the show. When there's breaking news, I have a Twitter alert for Adam Schefter or Adrian Wojnarowski or Pete Thamel when it comes to college football and basketball. So as soon as there's breaking news, it's immediately on my phone. I don't have to wait to go to the fax machine and see that, a news wire is coming in from a fax machine. I don't have to, wonder, if, what was this exact quote? I can always go to Twitter and find the quote there. I'll say from today's show, we talked a lot about Carson Wentz and the comments from Jim Irsay, the owner of the Colts, saying that, they had to move on from Carson Wentz. And that I saw first on Twitter. It was trending on Twitter. And then I went and read the article on The Athletic, but the first place I saw it was Twitter. It's almost like a buffet of sports information, and you kind of pick and choose the ones that you like to use on your show. So I can't imagine what this would be like without, the concept of social media. I also tell a really funny story. So I've been producing morning radio for 11 years. And I would say the first 4 years of it, I had no idea who was awake during my show. I didn't want to wake people up. I didn't want to call someone at 7:30 in the morning if they weren't awake. And the way I started figuring out who my guests would be during the show. I'd be on Twitter and seeing who was tweeting, and I'd write it down, and I have a list of all these people who tweeted during the show. So I would know who was awake and who was available during the 7 to 10 a.m. time slot that I was producing at the time. So social media has been a huge influence in helping, gear content, but not only that, helping me build relationships by, seeing people tweet and tweeting back and, having conversations with people through that medium.
Absolutely. I think even for me, it's not really a sports related show. It's more just news in general. But I think social media is such a great tool to help you understand, obviously breaking news, but what people want to talk about and what is interest for them. So I think it's a well-balanced machine, but there's also the negative aspects of social media where sometimes you'll read a headline and it will say Carson Wentz is traded to the Cincinnati Bengals somehow. And it's
Yeah.
always like this misleading thing. So how do you kind of combat, like, obviously the real news opposed to like the people trying to bait you and then click on their Twitter accounts and all that stuff?
Yeah, I always weigh the risk versus the reward. So, like if something's on Twitter, I will make sure that it's, there's a second source tweeting about it. The good thing at ESPN is that we have a lot of places where we can verify stuff like that. So that's why I have like the Twitter alerts for Schefter and Woj and those people. So that way, if there's a fake Schefter account tweeting something, if I haven't gotten the Twitter alert, I know that it's not a real account. Same thing, with Adrian Wojnarowski around the NBA trade deadline. If there's a fake trade out there, I know if I haven't gotten that Twitter alert, it's not real. And then if there's also like, just verifying things. Like I try to use my own sources as a producer to, verify something I see on Twitter. I'll reach out to one of our reporters and, I'm not afraid to be like, hey, I saw this on Twitter. You're not reporting it. What's your guidance here for covering this story? And that way, say it's like an Adam Schefter and I text him that, he'll get back to me and say, yeah, I'm gonna confirm that in about 20 minutes. You guys would be good to report on that in the morning. Or, say it's during my show and this happens, I'll text Adam Schefter or I'll text, someone in our news desk and say, hey, this report's out there. I saw that we're not reporting it yet. What's the guidance here? An example I can use on that's not NFL is last summer when Simone Biles had withdrawn from the gymnastics competition and walked off in the middle of the competition. It was all over Twitter, but we as a company had not confirmed it through one of our reporters. So I remember making the call to our news desk and asking, is this okay to report on? Is this okay to discuss on air? And the answer I got was, yeah, we're about to send out a newswire on it, wait for the newswire, and then follow the newswire for guidance. And our newswires are electronic. Like I talked about the fax machine like from years ago. Ours are electronic. They come through a program we have called ENPS. So that way, when there's a newswire that goes out, it pops up right on my screen in the middle of the show. I get an alert and I see it. So like when it comes to social media, I try to weigh the risk versus the reward. And my show is not a news show. It's an opinion show. It's a guest show. It's a caller driven show. So I don't feel we need to be first on anything. I've told my host that our job isn't to be first. It's to be right. And then give an opinion off of the right information. Because once you try to be first, that's when you get into mistakes. And there are news shows like SportsCenter is a news show and Get Up is more of a news show. And those shows, it's on them to get that information out as quickly as possible. For us, it's not. It's more of let's get the information right, because the last thing you want to do is lose your credibility by talking about a story that's not actually accurate.
You definitely have to make sure that you're, sharing the right information for your viewers, because as soon as you say something incorrect that is not even close to being correct, you're going to lose your audience. And
or you'll hurt a relationship. I'll tell a story. Like a big learning lesson for me was, I won't tell the story exactly, but we on the show talked about a quote from an NFL head coach. We actually played the sound, and I didn't think the sound was taken out of context. I had read the entire quote, but we talked about it on the air, and then we posted a video of us talking about it on social media, and the team saw the clip and asked us to take it down because we had, talked about something that they felt was taken out of context. And I had we had a meeting with the team, and we decided in the end of the day to take the clip down because we understood where we may have gone wrong. And that's some of the stuff that I try to shy away from. It's not just the viewers. Like I know that this business is all about relationships, and it's important to keep those relationships happy. So like, that's also part of weighing the risk versus the reward of talking about something that you just see a headline on Twitter. Like that's what happened. I took full responsibility for it because I saw the headline on Twitter. I found the sound, but I didn't use the full soundbite. And so we ended up having to take the video down, and that was the end of it. Like we haven't heard anything about it since that day. But that's also something that you have to worry about, not just your viewers, but also the relationships in this business.
Of course. And then, very briefly, you are producer of a morning show. So, in general terms, what do you think would what generally creates like a good morning show?
For sports, I think it's making sure you're talking about the most relevant topics of the day. People wake up, they want to know what happened the night before, and they want information and they want to be entertained. And so for our show, and the other thing that's important with the morning show, more than any other show, is pace. Our show is very fast paced. We try to move from topic to topic to topic. We try to, what we call is features and benchmarks that we have where we'll, play a game and we'll, throw out, buy or sell, or, is this statement, do you guys think this player is real or not real to win the Super Bowl with their current team, stuff like that. So we try to have a lot of pace elements in our morning show, but also the biggest thing is talking about the headlines of the day, talking about the games from the night before, and talking about the NFL. Like you talked about the influence that social media can have on letting you know what the audience wants to talk about. We put a poll up every day on our show saying, asking the audience, what do you want us to talk about at 9:45 in our last segment of the day? And then we say, vote now. And I would say today was today was an NBA topic that they want us to talk about. But I would say, 9 times out of 10, it's an NFL topic that gets the most votes, and that's what people want us to talk about. So I would say that's the biggest thing with a morning show is just be entertaining, have good pace, have high energy. It's hard at 6 a.m. to have high energy, but we have an ability to do it on a consistent basis. And I think that and all the topics that we're talking about, the strong opinions, leads to a good show.
Honestly, you can feel it when you listen to the show as well. It's just the energy's there. And then the segments pacing is, I think, one of the best when I listen to like anything in the morning, is just because you guys are so quick with it and you're on and you're on and you're on. So I appreciate that about the show. But you brought it up a little bit. The NFL is certainly king, especially in the United States, where even in the offseason, like just right now, middle of the offseason, and it's still dominating every single headline. Do you ever think that any sport has the ability to catch up to the NFL at this point? Or do you think they've kind of just solidified themselves?
No, I don't. I think the NBA got close a couple of years ago when the NFL ratings were lower, the interest was less. But I think the NFL is only getting more exciting and only gaining more interest for a couple of reasons. One, it's only once a week during the season. And so the supply and the demand, people look forward to being able to watch the games once a week. It's the pace of the game is incredibly entertaining. The level of play at the quarterback position is higher than it's ever been in the league. We have very young, exciting quarterbacks that play the position much different than we've ever had. And along those lines, teams are willing to trade quarterbacks like it's nothing. Like we've never seen this in the NFL, where teams are willing to eat cap space and trade their quarterback to another team because they think they can move on and rebuild their franchise quicker. We saw it with Matt Ryan. We saw it with Russell Wilson. We saw it with Carson Wentz now 2 years in a row. And so I think because the NFL has seen this QB carousel the last 2 seasons, it's led to even more interest in the offseason than the league ever had. I mean, the week of the NCAA tournament starting, that was the first week of NFL free agency. And on our show, we talked, I would say 95% NFL, 4% NBA, and 1% college basketball for March Madness. So to me, stuff like that only signals that the NFL is only going to get stronger. It's only going to get more popular. You're seeing it with the amount of money these networks are, doling out for the rights. You're seeing it all around. So I think the NFL is going to continue to be king. I don't see any sport catching it.
Yeah, I think it's really a battle for second place at this point. But I'm interested to know, so the MLS is the United States Soccer League, and it's the biggest one that they have. And recently with teams like Atlanta and Charlotte, they've really started to garner, I think, more interest, especially with the fans that are in the stadiums. You ever see a day where like the MLS is, more covered on popular shows, or do you think that soccer is never really going to take off here?
I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know the answer to. I'm a soccer fan. I'll watch, the World Cup qualifiers. I'll watch international games. I'm a Tottenham supporter, so go Spurs. Um, but I don't know because I don't think our best athletes are ever going to play soccer, and I think that's the problem that we have in this country when it comes to soccer. We've had it for years. It's getting better with Christian Pulisic and Gio Reyna and the young stars that we have playing overseas, playing in the best leagues. Serginho Dest playing for Barcelona. Like, I think that helps. But I think the problem that we're always going to have in this country when it comes to soccer is that the best players, the best athletes in this country play football, play basketball, and play baseball for that matter. And I think that's one of the issues that this country is always going to run into when it comes to soccer.
We're going to hit one final question. And, we are in the New York area, at least for Montclair State, and you're pretty close to New York yourself. The New York Jets, you're a huge fan.
I am.
We're going into the NFL draft. What do you think? Are you hopeful? Do you think the leaf has been turned here? Are we getting to the good part for the Jets? Please give me your opinions.
It's all going to come down to Zach Wilson. And I saw a lot of things at the end of last season that I liked about Zach Wilson. I think I saw a stat today that he and Aaron Rodgers are the only two quarterbacks over their last 5 games of the regular season who didn't throw an interception. So he made a lot of strides. He made a lot of growth last season. So I'm hopeful that the Jets will turn the corner. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs next year. The AFC is loaded, but I do think they're on the right track. I do think Joe Douglas is doing a really good job in the draft, in free agency. And so we'll see. I think the one thing they should do is they should try to package some of their lesser picks for a wide receiver like an A.J. Brown or a DK Metcalf. And then, that way they can use that 4th and 10th pick to go draft their biggest needs, which are defensive end. And then they can get Kayvon Thibodeau or cornerback with Sauce Gardner from Cincinnati. So hopefully they're turning a corner, but it's all going to come down to the quarterback because it's a quarterback league. He showed a lot of signs last year, but can he get to that, Joe Burrow level? That's still to be seen.
It's definitely going to be a hard journey in the AFC. And Jets executives, you heard our man, Evan. Listen to him, do what he says. But we cannot thank you enough, Evan Wilner, for coming on to the show. We appreciate your wise words, and we look forward to seeing what else you have in the future.
Thanks, Isaiah. Appreciate you having me.